What's up, you guys? I'm here with a new video today. We're here to do the next episode of How Meta Relevant Is This Card, and we're going to be talking about Called by the Grave. I know it's been a while since this card's been out. This card was actually released during, I believe it was YCS, Utah, Salt Lake City, and there was a lot of hype behind this card. A lot of people said, oh man, you know, this card's going to be insane. This card's going to be the be-all, end-all for hand traps, etc., etc. And then, to be honest, the card has done well, but it has not just completely blown the metagame like out of the water. I think a lot of people thought, oh man, this card is so good, like, oh man, how are you going to make hand traps anymore? You know, people would make, you know, weird statements like that, and it's like hand traps basically kind of run Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, they stop your opponent from doing things, and even though this is an answer to the hand traps that would stop you from playing, there are ways to play around Called by the Grave, and Called by the Grave actually is an amazing card because it has multiple uses beyond hand traps. I think a lot of players were just looking at this as an answer to hand traps, and then as time progressed, they realized, oh man, this card's actually really good in certain situations. There are these niche situations in which activating Call of the Grave can be the difference between you winning and losing. And I'm not only talking about going through hand traps, I'm talking about just general monster effects that your opponent can activate during your turn. By being able to shut them off, you can pretty much win the game. But we'll start with the basics. Okay, so what is Called by the Grave? Called by the Grave, it's a quick play spell. It simply reads, target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. And if you do, until the end of the next turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of monsters with the same original name. Now, I know that sounds kind of confusing to like most people. You're wondering, okay, to break it down, what does that pretty much mean? Okay, well, say your opponent activates Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs when you activate Hell, the grass is greener. Everyone knows grass is greener. And you activate Called by the Grave. But what it ends up doing is, since Ash Blossom was sent to the graveyard, you banish it until, for this entire turn, its effects are negated. So the effect of that Ash Blossom is negated, as well as the activated effects and effects of cards on the field with the same name. So basically, once you use Called by the Grave on Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, the opponent can no longer use it. I know Ash is only once per turn, but it's just using an example. Another card that would be better on would be Effect Veiler. So say you Call by the Grave Effect Veiler. Say your opponent has multiple Effect Veilers in their hand. Since Effect Veiler isn't once per turn, you're able to use multiple. Well, if you activate Called by the Grave, pretty much the rest of their Veilers are useless for the rest of that turn. So card's really good. It's able to stop multiple, multiple monster effects, multiple hand traps, and I think it's just a really solid card in general. Other applications it can have are to other monster effects that can activate multiple times in a turn, and that's what we'll be talking about. So now that we pretty much talked about what the card does, we're going to talk about, okay, how meta relevant is it against most of the decks this format. So we'll start with Pendulum Magicians. Pendulum Magicians just won YCS Memphis. Kamal did his thing. My boy Andres got second. It was crazy. Amazing finals. Now, how meta relevant is Called by the Grave against Pendulums? Now, here's the thing. It's a really weird card in that matchup. And I say that because you think of all the monsters they play, you think of all the, the main cards they play, and you wonder, what on earth am I going to hit with Called by the Grave? And to be honest, it's not that good against Pendulum Magicians. Pendulum Magicians usually don't really have a graveyard, you guys. Like, they don't have a graveyard because they're just linking away into Electromite, then they're pendulum summoning, putting stuff in their extra deck. Like, their extra deck is basically their graveyard, and that's the thing, is Called by the Grave only hits cards in the graveyard or when they activate them. So I thought, okay, what are some cards you can hit? And I did think of one that's actually, it's not the worst interaction, but I mean, it's not the best either. You can use Called by the Grave on Darkworm, and I say that because they're going to usually start their turn with Foolish Burial or Dragon Shrine, send the Darkworm, then activate the Darkworm effect. What you can do is you can chain Called by the Grave, banish the Darkworm, and then the Darkworm doesn't get its effect. Now, by doing that, they're not able to add the scale to their hand, and believe it or not, sometimes that's enough. I say that because in the interactions I've had with Joel and Lockbird versus this deck, when they go Foolish Burial or Dragon Shrine, activate the Darkworm, and then Darkworm's effect activates, and they add the gate to hand, they can't add any more cards to their hand. A lot of times they just pass their turn. So I feel like Call to the Grave, I guess in a sense, might have that same aspect, but I'm not sure. I'd say that it's one of the few cards you can hit, so it's not terrible. And I guess further on as the game goes, as the game progresses, you can hit an Electromite that's in Grave when they try to summon a second one and just negate its effects. So yeah, I mean, it's not the best against Pendulum Magicians. I'd say it's not that meta relevant unless they're playing hand traps. Both Kamal and Andreas played Ogres and Ashes. So in that sense, yeah, those actually are pretty good cards against Those are pretty good monsters to hit with Called by the Grave, pretty good hand traps. So I feel Called by the Grave is not the best against Pendulum Magicians, but it's not the worst either. I feel like it has its applications in almost every matchup, and I think it's more so geared towards what you're playing against, and what if you know what your opponent's main monsters are, you'll know what to hit like with Called by the Grave. Next deck to talk about, of course, is True Draco. So True Draco, honestly, this card is just terrible. And I say that because the monsters, like, they play so little. The only time this will be relevant is if they side in hand traps against you, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I think it really depends on the matchup. I'm pretty much just going to just not even bother with True Draco. I feel like Called by the Grave, unfortunately, is just not that meta relevant against True Draco. All the monsters in the grave, I mean, you're not really activating their effects. Like, none of that stuff is really happening. So, and I mean, a lot of times the masterpiece is on Monster Trap. I mean, I guess, like, again, another cheeky interaction that'll probably never happen, but we got to put the situations there. If you destroyed one masterpiece or kaiju'd one masterpiece, they use a second masterpiece, they use its effect to banish a continuous trap, and they're not under spell, monster, spell, trap, whatever with the masterpiece. I guess you could Call by the Grave, banish the masterpiece, then negate that masterpiece on the field. But honestly, that situation I don't think will come up that much. You might be surprised, though. It might be one of those cheeky situations where it does happen, but honestly, it's not that good against True Draco. Next, Call by the Grave against Invoked. Now, this is what's interesting. So, Call by the Grave against Invoked is really, really good. And I say that because it depends, you know, when you're activating it. Everyone knows the whole deck is Alistair.deck. Well, if they have an Alistair already in grave, you basically just, when they try to summon another Alistair, you just Call by the Grave that Alistair, and, well, the Alistair on field is negated, one is banished from the graveyard, and they don't get their invocation. So it's not the best card against them, but it's decent. It's not terrible against that card. So I guess against Invoked it's not horrendous. Against the Mech Knights, I don't think it really matters. Most of the time the Mech Knights aren't even in the graveyard, like unless we linked away with Blue Sky. I mean, again, I have to give you guys all those interactions where the Blue Sky was linked away with Alistair to make Underclock Taker or Proxy Dragon, and I summon another Blue Sky. I try to activate its effect, and you Call by the Grave, the Blue Sky in the grave. I don't get my Blue Sky effects, so there are those interactions, you guys, and I just want to present them to you with Called by the Grave. Other decks, it's really good against ABC. Now, this is what's crazy. You can just banish, like, the pieces, or you can banish the Buster Dragon altogether. They go to activate Buster Dragon. They have one in grave. You just banish the Buster Dragon, and it just negates the Buster Dragon effect. That's kind of cool. I mean, I don't really want to talk that much about ABCs. I did play one in Swiss. It's a hard matchup, you guys. If you guys really want to see how to beat this deck on ABC, I'll do it. It's actually pretty simple, but if you guys do want to hear, like, more in-depth, like, other ways to beat the deck besides the obvious, we can cover that. I'll put a poll in the community tab if you guys want me to talk about that. But against ABC, it has its interactions, of course. And then pretty much across the spectrum, like, there's a lot of different decks. There's Zephyra, there's the Gem Knight FTK. It actually became more of a godsend for decks like that. Call by the Grave basically answers the hand traps that can stop FTK decks. So by siding in Call by the Grave, they pretty much keep themselves safe from, you know, any of the issues with hand traps that can stop them from their FTK. Unfortunately, that's not a great thing, but I guess if they're playing the deck, it's an amazing thing. So I guess across the board, like, Call by the Grave, it doesn't really sound that meta relevant, but here is why, and here is the whole point to this video. Call by the Grave is meta relevant in the side deck. I think it's an amazing side deck card. I know some players have gone as far to main deck it. I believe that it belongs in the main deck of an FTK deck or a combo deck that is so heavily reliant on getting their combo off that if you hand trap them and they can't respond, it's really bad. And the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up the video is Call by the Grave is broken against 60 card decks. And I say that because Snow gets destroyed by Call by the Grave. They go to activate Snow in grave. You activate Call by the Grave. If they want that Snow to survive, they have to banish another 7 cards, which means they are investing 14 cards to summon 1 Snow. Once you get over that Snow, I mean, putting another 7 to 14 cards in the grave is not super simple if the game state has already been simplified. So I feel like Call by the Grave is really good against 60. There's a lot of cards you can hit in that deck. Snow is insane, though, because you banish their Snow. You banish their Snow, and that's enough sometimes to just win, because Snow is so relevant in that deck and such a good interruption card that if you take that away from them, their resources kind of dwindle. And especially if they decided to use up 14 cards in their grave, they're probably banishing essential combo pieces like the zombie cards, the dinosaurs, etc. So I feel like Call by the Grave, amazing against 60 cards. And back to what I was saying before, I feel that this card is meta relevant when you put in the side deck. I feel it's really good against certain decks. I feel it's good against anything that would stop it would stop your combos from going off. You just call by the grave, any of the hand traps, and you just win. I feel it's a really solid card in the 60 card mirror match. I feel it's a solid card when you're playing like Gem Knight FTK or maybe even Pendulum FTK, because you just catch their Ogre or catch their Veiler or any other cards that can slow you down. You catch their Droll and Lockbird. Any of these cards that would really screw you over in the long run, and you pretty much get to proceed playing. I feel that this was a card created so that when you're playing a combo deck, if they try to stop your combo, you chain this and you keep playing. The fact that it's a quick play is absolutely insane. It's also a good card to set because you just catch your opponent. They don't see it coming. I feel that this card will definitely see more play as the format progresses. I feel that right now it's not super meta relevant in the main deck. I feel the meta relevancy is in the side deck, and it's an amazing side deck card, kind of like Forbidden Chalice was. I feel that this is a card you can side in against the majority of matchups, but I feel it's weaker in some instances. Like I said, I don't feel it's that strong against Draco or that strong against Pendulum Magicians, unless you saw they were playing more hand traps than the standard build. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Again, I don't mention everything. That's for you guys to talk about in the comments below. Do you guys want to have a discussion about what you guys think about Call by the Grave? You definitely can. I just want to bring this episode to you guys. If there's anything that I missed, of course, just put it in the comments below. Give me another card you want me to talk about on how meta relevant is this card. Definitely check out Team Dank Deals. That's my new team, you guys. You'll see a link is in the description. Be sure to like us on Facebook. Really would appreciate it. I'll be producing a lot of content there, as well as you'll see me and Johnny and the whole bunch of guys at the YCSs and Nationals this year. Just great group of guys. Be sure to check out our Facebook page. We update regularly. And just let me know the next episode you guys want to see of how meta relevant is this card, and anything that I missed. Like I said, put in the comments below. Mention any interactions that you've had with Called by the Grave, and things that you feel that will make this card more relevant as the format progresses and into hopefully our soon-to-be ban list and our newer format in the future. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.